Welcome everyone to your somewhat comprehensive guide to airships. This video will only cover the balloon-based airships and how to build them and what different parts do. This video will also be divided into various sections that you will see here in a second. Let's get into it. To start off, you want to get yourself your aviator goggles. They work as normal goggles, but also show the weights of different blocks. The physics assembler is probably the most important block inside of Create Aeronautics because it lets you assemble contraptions such as this. The physics assembler will only assemble the block underneath it, as you can see here. However, if you connect blocks with honey glue, it will turn them both, or all things connected. The next most important part to your airships is going to be the portable engines. These are your power sources for most medium to small airships. They take fuel such as coal, wood, whatever, and will output 2000 SU. You can also give them blaze cakes, and they will double in output and speed. Next is your propellers. The andesite and wooden propeller, these are the exact same, however, aesthetically different. You can power these with anything you want. Your engines will be your primary power source. And as you can see here, they are outputting thrust and they give you an airflow stat here. You can see the direction they're pushing air by the particles behind it. And if you increase the speed, you'll notice it gets noticeably stronger. If you reverse the speed, it will go the other way. This will be your primary source of thrust, and for some airships, you can also use this to turn. Another important block is the propeller bearing. Not all ships will be able to move very quickly with these small baby propellers, so you might want something bigger and more powerful, such as the propeller bearing. You can attach sails to this like you would a windmill with Create mod, and by giving it power, it will turn just like these small propellers. But they give noticeably more thrust, and you can also change the thrust direction on the block without changing the rotation. Next up is the steering wheel. The steering wheel is going to be one of your most common sources of turning, and they work by having a output at the bottom that, if you look here, rotates as I rotate the wheel. At the top here, you can also edit the maximum angle that you can turn. See how it's not going past that 45 degrees I just set. And if we give it cogs, you'll notice the cogs move too. Now, adding onto the steering wheel is the swivel bearing. This is going to be what you use in pair with the steering wheel in order to turn. And then you will attach your symmetric sails, or whatever you want to produce drag that will allow your airships to turn. And I will show better examples of turning in the next section. The swivel bearing does have more purposes than just turning. However, for your airships, it is going to be what you use them for the most. What these actually do is turn anything on top of them into a simulated contraption, not a normal contraption like your mechanical bearings will. Next, we have the analog transmission and the throttle lever. These are going to be your most important blocks if you want to control how fast your airship is moving. Let's place down our engine, let's give it some fuel, and let's put a cogwheel on the end here. Let's then add our analog transmission and put a throttle lever next to it and give it some power. So if you notice, at maximum strength it is completely stopped, but if I go down one, it's even slower than this. And that's what the analog transmission does. It will slow down or speed up the output. So now, let's say I put one to the side here and do the same thing. Now, if you notice, it's actually stopped moving, and that's because it's going too fast. But if I go to 13, now look how fast it's going. But the side here is still only as fast as this cog. And that's important to keep in mind, because what you should do is grab yourself an analog lever, And instead of using this throttle, you're going to set your analog lever to 13 or whatever you need to make it go the maximum speed. And you just leave that. And what you'll do then is you'll add another analog transmission, a casing, and then another cogwheel here. And now you have a maximum speed rotation coming from this very slow engine in 4 blocks. And now you can use the throttle lever, right click on it to reverse its signal, and now you're stopped when you're down. And I want to go forward, I do this. And now we have to imagine that I have a propeller attached to this here. So then I can go slow, a little bit faster, and full speed. You'll normally do is use redstone links here and connect the throttle lever to the link such as this. Reverse the signal, and now from my cockpit I can control my propeller. Now for probably the most important part to an airship, the balloon. What you're going to need is your air balloon envelopes and the burner. What the burner does, it will fill any hot air balloon space above it. And if you look at it with your aviator goggles, you can see the balloon volume and the gas output. And this is proportional with your analog levers. However, if you notice that yellow bar there, that is the bar it'll fill to. Notice how it's still maxed even though I only give it 1 strength. And that is because your gas output is 500 when the volume's only 30. So what you want to do is lower this to your maximum balloon volume. And now, if you look at that yellow bar, because I'm on 1 strength, it's all the way at the bottom. And this is how people control how high up you go. Now, for your hot air balloon envelopes, these need to be airtight, but the bottom can be exposed. And I think the best way to explain this is to just show the ponder. This is the showcase for all of the blocks you just learned to see how they work in action. This here is one of my first videos. This is the Horizon Personal Transport Airship. It is a very small airship that looks very complicated than it actually is. But I'm going to go ahead and strip down all of the decorative bits to show you how it actually works. Now, here we have the ship all torn down to its most basic parts. Let's start simple with the steering. This is our steering wheel. It goes down into a gearbox and then all the way along back here into a swivel bearing, as I've shown before, into the rudder. This turns now to our engines and the speed controls, which is probably the most complicated part about any airship. As you can see, I have an engine here going into an encased chain drive, connecting them. These go into a gearbox, up into this cogwheel, and then into the transmission that is being powered to speed up all the way. Next, up here, we have another analog transmission into this cogwheel, back out into the propeller. And as you can see, if I turn on this propeller, this turns off, and the speed is let through all the way into a propeller. Next is the burner, which is right here, set at 180, with a link connecting it from here to here. And as you can see, the balloon volume is 180 meters squared, and my gas output is 180. Very, very simple. You just have to keep in mind things such as the weight, and center of mass, which can all be checked with a contraptions diagram, which you place on your physics object and can right click it to get information such as the lift or drag and gravity. By clicking this button here, you can also show your center of mass, which can be useful in balancing out your airship. Also keep in mind when building your airship that this balloon here will always generate a lot of drag. So if your propeller's down at the bottom, you will most likely tilt back very heavily because the drag is pushing the top. Just keep that in mind, and that's why I generally prefer to have my propellers in line with the balloon. Also important to mention, these need to be airtight. So how do you fit a propeller here because the shaft is not airtight? Well, you can encase them, just like this. Do not forget this, or else your balloon will not generate enough lift. It is also worth mentioning the velocity and the altitude sensor. These are here just to show me the stats and nothing more. However, they do output redstone signals, which can be used in more advanced builds. Now, let's get into a very simple tutorial just to build your very first, very simple airship. When building your airship, please do keep in mind that the analog transmission and the throttle levers both require brass parts. This means they might not necessarily be early game, which is why this first airship I'm going to show you here is not going to use either of them. I am instead going to use the analog lever and not control my speed. If you want to be able to increase your speed slightly, you can use the adjustable chain gear shift, which, if you place and give power, you'll notice that this goes at double the speed. And you could technically stack this if you so wished. However, I don't recommend it just because of the space it'll take up. Now, let's get into the actual tutorial part. You want to find yourself some light blocks. Planks are the lightest block, weighing at only 0.5 per full block, and is generally the most recommended for your airship builds, unless it's really big. Go ahead and build out a little platform, whatever shape you want it to be. And I'm not going to worry too much about aesthetics here, and I'm just going to try to make something very simple and very functional. I generally like outlining the shape of the actual airship before I do anything too crazy. So I think I'm going to do something like this, and I'm going to have my steering wheel here. So now that I know where I want my steering wheel to be, I'm going to go ahead and place it and break these blocks to put a cogwheel down the middle. And since this is the end, I'm going to put the swivel bearing and a symmetrical sail to produce drag. Now I'm going to test, and that is turning the opposite direction I want, because right now, if I had it like this in my airship, I would be turning right, even though I turn the wheel left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to you can either add or remove one cogwheel from this. You can also instead use gearboxes to turn that into a shaft and go along the back if it doesn't line up how you want it to. Which I think I'm going to do here, just because I don't want this airship to be too long. Okay, pause real quick because I messed up. You actually need another gearbox or something to swap the rotation of the shaft if you're doing it this way for it to turn correctly. And while you're here, please do like and subscribe. It'll help me out a ton as a growing channel. Also, join the community Discord to hang out, ask questions, and get my schematics easily. Do keep in mind that when using gearboxes, you are going to take up more space because you have to go up a block in order to put the cog back down. And I think I'm going to have the swivel bearing face downwards like this. I'm also going to encase the blocks down here so it's a clean floor. I'm going to add just some sails here for drag purposes, Now, since the bottom is here, I do not want to tip, so I'm going to actually go up like this. Now, I want to get in a balloon. So I'm going to grab my envelope blocks, and then I'm going to build up. And this is going to be a very small airship, so I'm not going to go too big. And I'm going to go, I think that looks good to me. Something like this. Nice and small. It's very important that you get your air balloon size correct, or else you might not have enough lift to actually float or float to the heights that you want. But you can adjust the size and length of it as you build and as you add weight, so it's not too big of a deal if you don't get it right the first time. Practice makes perfect. Okay, now that we have a simple balloon, I'm going to find a spot for our burner. So I think this is a very nice simple spot. I'm just going to put it here right behind us, and I'm going to give it some power. Now remember, we're still not a physics object, so we're not going to go floating away. And as you can see, our balloon volume is 60, so I'm going to go ahead and adjust this. Now, we do need to get some power up into this balloon because I want to put the propellers right here. And I think because this thing's small, I'm only going to do one andesite propeller and nothing crazy big. Go ahead and connect it with a shaft and then encase that shaft. Now I want to go ahead and find a spot for the engine, and I think I'm going to put that right there. And I'm going to attach a vertical gearbox to it. Now I'm going to come up into here. I'm going to place a shaft, another vertical gearbox, and connect them up. Now if I give power, we go forward. However, we don't want to be going forward whenever it's powered. So what you're going to want to add is a clutch somewhere here or down here, wherever you can fit it. Do keep in mind that all of these blocks you're adding inside of here are taking away some of the lifting capacity in this balloon. Now I'm going to grab myself some links here, and I'm just going to place them on the side right here with a lever here and an analog lever right, and an analog lever right here. And that's because I don't actually need to connect this link, I just need it there for weight balancing. You can also instead use something of equal weight because this weighs 0.25 and something like a trapdoor also weighs 0.25. And now, as I strengthen this, the burner begins to fill. I'm also going to pick a signal for this, and I'm just going to do something random like that. Come up here and add another link and do the exact same signal, but set this one to receive. Now if I turn this on, that gets turned on. So now we can give coal to our engine. And we're not moving. But if I unpower this, we begin moving. This is going to be extremely slow. Do not expect to go faster than like a few meters a second with only one of these going at this speed. However, this is your first airship and you won't be expected to go anywhere fast without analog or speed controllers. You can, again, also, if you have enough space, use the adjustable chain drives to increase your speed or use gear shifting. That is technically all you need for a functional airship. It also looks aesthetically nice if you connect your balloon with like fences or ropes or whatever you have access to. For simplicity's sake, I'm just going to connect using some fences here, such as this. And in the back, do the same. Now, it doesn't look the prettiest, but it should function as an airship. Now, to test this, let's grab ourselves some honey and the physics assembler. You're going to grab your honey glue, and you're going to select any two parts, and then you're going to expand it. This works just like a schematic, so you don't have to use a ton of glue. It's not very particular, but you want to be careful not to get anything like the ground or anything else caught into it. Now we're going to grab this, and now it's a physics object. The moment of truth. How balanced is it? Go ahead and crank up our hot air burner, and if we have enough lift, we should rise. Also notice that our balloon volume went down to 55 from 59 where it was. Well, look at that. That is a pretty big tilt, but there are ways to fix this. The biggest way to fix this is to grab yourself a heavy block, such as coal, iron, pretty much any ore block is considered super heavy, and just simply place it somewhere on the front of your ship. You can also, instead, take away space in your burner. So if I come up into here, I can do this to remove some space from the burner, and now we're tipping back down because there's less air in the front. Let's give it a second to balance out properly, and that's pretty good. That's about a few degrees. I'll add one more to see if I can balance it out better. And look at that, we're floating. If I lower this by, let's say, 2. Nope, okay, our volume's down to 48. It's still max, need to keep in mind. There we go. And we're lowering. And you can control your height a little bit more precisely with this. Now let's go ahead and turn off the lever, and our propeller should begin moving. Yep, and if you look down, we can see we're moving forward, but we're also moving forward really slowly. And that's because we have one very weak andesite propeller. So what I recommend is to gear shift at least once, if you can, multiple times, just for the sake of your sanity at going a decent speed. And for my sake here, what I'm going to do is break all of these back here. Oh, we're tipping. I highly recommend just landing. So what I'm going to do is gear shift using chain drives. I'm going to place one down here, if I can. It won't let me. There we go. Then I'm going to put another one here to double. Then what I'm going to do is power this. And now if we come up here, you can see it's moving a lot faster. I need to add in the clutch again, like this, with the same link. We should be moving significantly faster when I turn on this. And you can see it's using a lot more power, but it's going a lot faster. Now that's it for this very simple tutorial. This will function you in the early game without many resources. Now we're going to take a little bit break from our airship building and show you how to use schematics, because that's a very problematic issue I have been seeing within the community. Is a lot of people just don't know how airship schematics work. So what you're going to do is you're going to grab empty schematic, a schematic table, and if you're in survival mode, you'll need a cannon. Now if you want to save schematics, then I will show you in a second, but you can save schematics that are in current physic form just as easily as anything else. So you're going to place your table down, you're going to right click it, and if you need to, you can open the folder here, and it will open up your schematics folder where you can add new schematics that you download from other people. You're going to grab an empty schematic. You're going to pick your airship or whatever schematic you have here. And it should be as simple as that. Then you place it, and then if you use a schematic cannon, you give the blueprint to the schematic cannon and all of that. Or if you're in creative mode like I am, you can go to the print option and print your schematic. Now, these will always print in block form, not in physic form. So you need to use honey and assemble it. Some ones always come with honey and some do not. This one comes with honey in the blueprint, so it assembles nicely automatically. as you can see here. Do keep in mind that things like ropes will not save in the schematic. For example, the Horizon airship I showed early in the video actually has ballast here connected with the rope. But if I print, you'll notice there's actually no rope here, and that's because it does not save. These are also connected by rope here, but it doesn't save. There are some other niche consequences and bugs relating to saving schematics, but generally just keep that in mind. Now, if you want to save schematics, you simply select the area like this, and make sure you have everything you want inside of the area. You right click and then you save it, whatever you want. I will call this tutorial, and you're done. And if you do save and upload, then now you can paste it in. Now let's get into some of the more advanced parts that you're going to be using for your larger or more complicated airships. Let's start off with the steam vent. This is the burner's bigger brother, pretty much, and you have to attach these to steam boilers. This tutorial will not be on how boilers work. I highly recommend looking at a normal create mod video on how boilers work, because it is the exact same as a steam engine. However, you instead attach a steam vent, and these have a maximum blocks of 5,000 meters squared instead of 500. This, just like any other boiler and steam engine, it takes 16,000 SU from the boiler at maximum capacity. It can function as an idle, but it does not output the full 5,000 if it does not get all 16,000 stress units it needs from the boiler. Next, I'm going to talk about the torsion spring. This block will output to a certain degree and then stop. So let me show you what that means. If I put in this creative motor here, it turns 90 degrees and stops, even though it's getting continuous input. You can change this anywhere to 360 to 1. And when you remove power, because it is a spring, it goes back. And this is great for turning and is perfectly paired with the next block, the directional gear shift. I will attach this such as, and now I'll give it some power. Notice how it's not moving at all. And that's because I need to attach redstone inputs. So if I grab a lever here, it turns 45 degrees to the right. I'll unpower it and the spring moves it back. And if I power it to this side, then it turns 45 degrees to the left. And if I power both, then it turns off and it goes back to the default. This can be very useful if you want to turn with redstone instead of with a steering wheel. The docking connector, and this lets you dock with other builds. So I'm going to use this test we made earlier to show you. I'm going to move it up out of the way, and I need a spot to put this, so I'm just going to put it right here on the front, and then I'm going to put another one right here. I'm going to give this one power, and it's going to extend. And I need a spot to give this one power, so I'm just going to use the bottom. And now this one's extended. I'm not going to fly this because that's going to be too complicated. When they get close, they'll pull into each other and then connect. And this can be useful to transfer fluids and items between two different contraptions, or a contraption and the ground. This also can be used to, well, dock and stay in place with a solid connection. And if we break these, then it's still a contraption. It never becomes a block, it just gets stuck in place. Next, we have the gimbal sensor, and this will show you pretty much how much you're tilting. So I'm gonna put it on the front of this ship we made, and you'll notice that it says 0.04 and negative 0.01, and that means we're pretty much flat. But if I move you up and then tilt, you'll notice that it says negative 18 now. And this, as well as the other sensors I've shown you before, will output a redstone signal on the four sides depending on how angled it is. And you can set how angled it needs to hit max by the side here. This can be used to help stabilize you in your larger airships. Finally, we have the navigation table. This works the exact same as all the other sensors. However, you can instead put a compass or a map in here, and it will point and give a redstone signal in the direction of that whatever you put in here. This can be useful for making automatic things or just showing you where you need to go. There's a lot of niche features and other smaller things I didn't mention. This video is only meant to serve as a general guide, and I highly recommend experimenting and using the Ponder system to learn. If you have questions, then I also recommend joining the Discord server, where I'm much more likely to help you out. Now, this video was something different from my usual and uses my voice, which I'm not comfortable speaking with to YouTube yet, but I felt I should make a tutorial of some kind. Please let me know what kinds of videos y'all want in the future, as well as what kinds of builds I should make. And with that, like and subscribe. See you next time.